The time is just gone 8:35 a.m. We continue with the show this morning. Now we are learning about geologists who are warning of tropical cyclones that could hit KwaZulu-Natal in the future. Now we've seen the weather pattern. We've seen so much rain in the last 2 months or so, right across the entire country. We've seen flooding. We've seen what has happened in places like Ladysmith. And what are the chances of these severe tropical cyclones that could hit KwaZulu-Natal in the future? We joined on the line by climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace Africa, Thandile Chinyavanhu. Thandile, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this prediction by geologists warning of tropical cyclones that could hit KwaZulu-Natal. Now, we know we've been having some extreme weather conditions, and in fact, many of us here in Gauteng saying that we haven't even had a full summer yet, considering all the rain that we've had. And clearly, there is so much that is taking place, and also in terms of discussion with regard to climate change, projected climate change conditions in the future. Just what are your thoughts on this warning that has come through on the part of geologists?
Well, it's quite expected. We have seen an unprecedented amount of rain in the past few months, and this is symptomatic of the climate that has been changing, and it follows the trend of previous cyclones that we've seen for the past few years, Cyclone Eloise and Ida, across specifically the Highveld region as well as parts of KZN. So this is something that is expected. There has been a lot of science pointing towards climate change being a main contributor to this, and we will continue to see extreme weather events such as these becoming more frequent and more intense over time.
Yes. Now, just looking at the predictions or the projections that are being made now, clearly, I know they've looked at the past. They looked at what has taken place in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. But looking at Durban, we know that is now the Indian Ocean. Just in terms of some of the research and studies that have been conducted, that has ultimately resulted in this warning about tropical cyclones hitting KwaZulu-Natal. Now, just also trying to, at the same time, Thandile, trying to understand, the scientific projections and also all looking at the climate projections. How does that actually tie in, or how does one reconcile past climate conditions with current conditions and projections going forward?
Well, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, released a report towards the end of last year, around August, that was a scientific basis for climate change. And it basically compiled 14,000 pieces of individual research into climate change and the impact that it could potentially have for us going forward. And that was, as you recall, around that time, quite a damning report and really a signifier for humanity of what is to come. And that research actually highlighted that specifically in South Africa, the region of KZN is expected to experience more intense rainfall, increased precipitation, a lot more ecological damage as a result. And it has really profiled that this area is one that will experience quite a bit of flooding and cyclones in the coming years. So it is quite a challenging thing to look at. But our government needs to prioritize these emergency response and adaptation for the communities of these areas, and really look at the science and understand that this is a reality for many South Africans right now, and not something that is in the near future, but is happening as we speak.
Yes, and also I think there are two issues. We speak about global warming, but also there's a phenomenon called ocean warming. And when one looks at our neighbors, when one looks at Mozambique, for instance, we know that there are tropical storms in that part of the world, and they are confined to Mozambique. But with climate change, nothing could stop this traveling further up towards cities like Maputo, Durban, and also Richards Bay.
Absolutely. We have seen, as I mentioned, a number of cyclones that have specifically affected our neighbor Mozambique most extensively. But of course, those have also impacted the northern regions of South Africa, in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, as well as KZN. But the reality of it is that climate change is a transboundary issue, which is why it's an issue that we all should be concerned about. It is not something that's going to affect individual countries, although the experiences may be more pronounced because of issues of vulnerability and structural inequality that those specific countries may have. But South Africa is not a country that is immune to the issue of climate change and will definitely experience a lot more of it. And because as well as of our structural inequalities that we have, it could definitely be something that impacts us gravely compared to global north countries, which is why it's so important that our government prioritize this climate change response and they also take the capacity that is being provided by global north countries to adapt and provide mitigation opportunities for us.
Well, this was going to be my question to you, Thandile, in terms of the government, in terms of readiness, in terms of preparedness, and just how seriously should the government be taking these warnings and these projections?
They should be taking it absolutely seriously. I think last year the nationally determined contributions were released by our government, and they were not robust or strong enough to really mitigate the sort of climate crisis that we are about to experience. And they should be really prioritizing the people and the communities that are on the front line of these extreme weather events, because this is disrupting everything that people can really experience. So the concern with these heavy rains, and we've already seen this happening, is that it's disrupting people's access to healthcare, education. Already our infrastructure is very poorly prepared for what is about to happen. Many of your listeners will be aware that in Johannesburg, Pietermaritzburg, Eastern Cape, we've been seeing that our infrastructure is poorly prepared for this. Our roads have been flooding. Our stormwater cannot accommodate the level of rains that we're seeing, and that the impacts of that are going to be dire going forward. The concern in these communities is the issue of water quality, food quality. There's going to be a lot of contamination occurring. A lot of people have drowned as a part of these incidents and sustained injuries. So we're going to see a rise in infectious disease and injuries that need to be admitted into hospitals. But unfortunately, our hospitals are currently being overrun with COVID cases. So this is something that is quite an interlinked issue with all of the issues that we're battling with right now: poverty, COVID-19. This will all exacerbate the issues that we're facing, and our government needs to prioritize climate change, as this will just make all the issues that we're facing a lot worse. So we want to see our government prioritizing an improved disaster response. We want to see them declaring a climate emergency so that our municipalities are better capacitated to take on these issues. And we also want to see them prioritizing inclusivity and specifically disabled people in their evacuation responses, because this remains a vulnerable group that is often forgotten in such incidences.
Well, Thandile, thank you very much for that, for taking time out, talking to us this morning here on News and Views and Salam Media. All the best to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thandile Chinyavanhu joining us this morning, climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace Africa. And it is clear when it comes to disaster response, when it comes to readiness, when it comes to preparedness, our government should not be caught with their pants down. The time is just gone 8:44. We come back. It is the time of the week and the time of the day where we bring you Jummah inspirations, Nasiha. And this morning we will be joined after this by Maulana Zakir Jedwat.
Hey, defend your person and fulfill every decree. Fight at your side, repel each enemy. See your face with its moonlight quality.